What's up, guys? It's Lord Botha here with another video, and it looks like Borderlands 4 is gonna be a fairly big success, even though apparently everybody hates the game. Now, yes, I'm engaging in a bit of hyperbole, but the game did release to a mostly negative review on Steam, and it kind of all stems from originally this post that Borderlands on Twitter X made that outlines the actual PC minimum and recommended system specs to play the game. As you can see here, the recommended, by the way, if you're an avid PC gamer, you know at this point to mostly look at the recommended. I mean, the minimum basically tells you, hey, your computer with these parts it's gonna run the game. But also, the game's gonna be terrible. It's not probably gonna function at very serviceable rates. It's not gonna look the way it should look, but it will run. Whereas the recommended is more of a, hey, this will give you the general gaming experience that you need at the minimum. And that recommended was 32 gigabytes RAM, an Intel i7 core or an AMD Ryzen 7 7800X actually. And then they have a GeForce RTX 3080, AMD Radeon RX 6800 XT, and an Intel Arc B580. Yeah, those are pretty hefty specs. I'm not an expert in like computer hardware. I'll just put that right up front. But even I know that's quite an ask of your system. It's not what the, just normie PC gamer might have. And in fact, this was such an anticipated problem. They were expecting the game to have major frame rate issues. So much so that, and this is from Pirate Nation on Twitter X, stating here that Borderlands 4 Day 1 patch to deliver major PC optimizations, says Gearbox CEO. Quote, that the game runs at all on your system is a miracle. Not the way you really want to start out a sentence if you're the CEO of a game developer company and you have a game that's about to come out soon on PC, but it goes on, that you can get 55 to 60 frames per second out of heavy combat is actually incredible given how the engine works. That's the Unreal 5 engine that they decided to put this game in, even though you could have easily done an Unreal 4, given the more cartoonish, outlandish style of Borderlands. He goes on in the post, all right, it's confirmed now the game's performance is absolute garbage. RTX 5090, 4K barely scraping 60 frames per second, and you can't even turn off ray tracing. Yes, that is a thing that was highly suspected with this game. Anytime you have ray tracing on, this is the problem that Doom: The Dark Ages had, right? Where it just had permanent ray tracing on. You couldn't turn it off. And immediately you saw issues. And I can't remember specifically if Dark Ages also had de novo on it. I think it did, which made absolutely no sense to me. But not only does Borderlands 4 have de novo on it, which greatly decreases the performance of a game, it also has a different online anti-cheat software on it. I don't know the name of that one, but it actually has two online anti-cheat software for Borderlands 4. Like, why? Never have I ever heard somebody being like, oh, let's talk about the massive online community for Borderlands. There's such massive online play for Borderlands. So much so that you need an anti-cheat system, let alone two anti-cheat systems, bogging down the performance of the game on your system. So what happened? Well, the inevitable happened. The game came out, and guess what? People had problems with frame rate drops, even after the PC patch, right? This from Jake Lucky on Twitter X, A lot of Borderlands 4 complaints are people struggling to maintain at least 60 frames per second despite having decent PCs. He also includes a short clip of what looks like a stream here. I think it's Shroud, who's streaming this. Definitely somebody who's going to have a beefy PC system. And the video, granted, is him complaining that it's difficult for him to maintain 100 frames per second at 4K, and he has to turn settings down to like high and very high. He can't have them at ultra or whatever. But still, the fact that it's somebody with that beefy of a system and that well known, this thing, I don't know. You have to be like some rich Saudi oil baron's son and have the system that they can afford to like run this thing, which is insane because it's Borderlands 4. There's no reason for Borderlands 4 to be like this. Of course, are all the visual problems, the company's fault? Well, apparently not, because it looks like people were complaining a lot about motion blur too, because Randy Pitchford, the CEO, he decided to go to Twitter X and post this. Quickie for my console friends. Motion blur, not us. We aren't down with motion blur and do not support it. If you're seeing what seems to be motion blur, maybe check your television settings for whatever automatic BS it might be doing to your image. It's not us. He then has somebody down here, the top comment I see that says, you absolutely do not disable motion blur by default. I had to turn it off on my PC version of Borderlands 4. So yeah, this is not a good look. Surprise, surprise, Randy is putting his foot in his mouth again. Because when your game is having frame rate problems, when it's having apparently motion blur problems, and your instinct is to go online and be like, hey man, it's not us, blame your TV, check that shit out yourself. That from the head of a studio, that looks bad. I don't understand what it is with this guy that he can't figure out to just shut up. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to respond. You don't have to put some kind of word out there. You can just let it go. Let it linger. Let people think what they want to think. Because they're going to blame you for a lot of stuff that is your fault on this. And if this one thing is correct and it's not your fault, who the hell cares? You got a list of sins. If they throw one more on, what's the point of being like, hey, no. That's not us, though. And the people are letting them know how they feel in the reviews, though. This comes to us from PC Gamer, and it's entitled Borderlands 4 Launches to Mostly Negative Reviews on Steam, thanks to widespread performance problems and crashes. The article states multiple Steam users report low frame rates and persistent stuttering, even at reduced graphical settings and on powerful hardware. And complaints about frequent crashes are also common. They included this review quote here from Ediku, who writes, quote, terrible performance, worst I've ever seen, quote, turned it down to low graphics presence and couldn't hit 60 frames per second, even in FSR upscaling on my RX 6900 XT. They also have another quote here from Pirate135246, which says, quote, 30 frames per second at native medium to high settings on a 1440p with a 3080 Ti. It also looks worse than Borderlands 3, to be honest. I don't know how it runs this bad. Now, I will say since its launch, those have actually gone up from mostly negative to mixed, but still not great for a massive title launch. I'm not gonna really cherry pick any kind of reviews here. Just read you some of them off the top. This one from Kanoa Daddy. Gameplay is fun, but the crashing and frame issues on a pretty beastie PC, even at lower settings, is pretty unacceptable for a $70 game. Other than performance issues, gameplay is exactly what you expect from Borderlands. Here from V. It runs like absolute garbage. Cannot recommend this game until they fix the performance issues. My system reaches a maximum of 50 frames per second in combat on medium settings with DLSS turned on in performance mode. I refuse to use ultra performance since it massively impacts visual clarity. They also include some of the specs here that it looks like they're running at. A Ryzen 9, NVIDIA RTX 3090, 32 gigabytes RAM, Samsung 970 EVO. I mean, it looks like they should have enough to run at least the recommended, if not more. We'll also include a positive left review here that states they've learned their lesson with Borderlands 3, fixed the issues and brought up a new game with new things to do, more freedom of movement, a massive map full of NPCs to shoot at. Compared to previous Borderlands, this holds up to be the best of them all, etc., etc. I won't read you the whole rest. Here's another positive review. I'm going to try to clean up some of the grammar here. I have not had any of the issues that the others are having. No crashing or frame rate drop. I'm on a 4070. Fun game. Another review here. I have a 5090 and the newest Ryzen 3DX with more than enough RAM. The game crashes now that I'm 2 hours played. Here's another review. Game runs okay, much better than Borderlands 3. Played it a couple of days ago. Stuttering can happen, but nothing like 3. Bigger problem is how heavy this game is. At DLSS, performance mode is a frame gen on a 4090. It struggles to stay around 120 frames per second. Turning down settings doesn't seem to do much, so I doubt people with lower end GPUs are having a great time. This guy here just says, fun, yes. Optimized, absolutely not. Playable, barely. And that isn't a positive review, by the way. The point here is that everybody seems to be having pretty much the same experience, with a few exceptions, which is that Borderlands 4 runs absolutely terrible and has a lot of frame issues and graphical issues and just functionality issues, optimization issues that we were all really expecting. I mean, they did a whole event with Conan O'Brien on his clueless gamer thing that he does, where he plays video games and all that on his YouTube channel. And you know, doing this event with this well-known of a face on a channel that has 9 million subscribers, they were sure to have the best setup, the most optimized system to run this game. And even then, still, the game crashed. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid conclusion that this game is bogged down by just a bunch of terrible things that don't need to be in it visually, that's causing horrible optimization and horrible visual results, to the point where the game barely functions unless you have super high-end hardware. But despite all this game, at least from the player counts, looks like it's going to be a pretty firm financial success, because they had an all-time peak of 252,000 players. I mean, it's after midnight here in middle America, and we got 205,000 players on right now. And this is just on Steam. So that means that more people are playing undoubtedly on consoles, because Borderlands, it's one of those sort of IPs that came along in the generation where console gaming was all the rage and people hadn't really delved into PC gaming like they do now. So I think it's kind of grandfathered into this system where it's more thought of as a console IP. People who game mostly on consoles buy Borderlands on console. So I guarantee you there's even more people probably playing on console than there are PC. Which means, yes, despite all the optimization issues, despite the horrible functionality, despite the graphical problems, and despite the fact that we all knew it was coming and it was gonna be this bad, people still bought the game, and it's still probably gonna be a success. And the amount of things that this company will learn will be nothing. I will say though, from what I've heard through the grapevine, the actual story and the gameplay seems to be fairly good and enjoyable. The only problem is getting all of it to work. But when it does, it's good. Now, to know if the game was really a success, the only thing we have to do is wait. Because my guess is that if the game is an actual financial success, in about a week to a month, you're gonna hear Gearbox put out, we had this many sales. And if the game wasn't a success, they're gonna say, hey, we had this many players. Because that's what developers do nowadays, and publishers. If a game is financially successful, they publish the sales. If it's not, they publish the player count to make it look like it was financially successful, when most likely it probably wasn't. It either broke even or went into the negative. A lot of times, hard into the negative. But I do think this game is actually going to be profitable. We are going to see those sales numbers, and it will be interesting, the discourse surrounding them when it comes out. But hey, those are just my thoughts on all this. If you have your own thoughts, go and leave in the comments. If you liked this video, go and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, appreciate you watching all of it, and we'll talk to you again later.